Kumlan and Ablat Gemara. We're beginning the 8th Perek Hazodik. We finished all the different cases of Tanaim, traditional Gittin. Now the Gemara says, okay, you have to give her the get. Obviously, Torah says you place it in her hand. Right, you're right, so you give it in the hand. And the question is, what happens if you don't give it place in the hand? You place it in a courtyard or somewhere else. Says the Gemara. There's a Mishnah. Hazodik get lishta. If he tosses a get into his wife. Just beginning of the Perek, she's at home. She's standing there inside the courtyard. She is divorced. So it sounds like from the Mishnah here that in order for it to be good enough to receive the get in her house or in her chutzner, how does she have a house? We'll see later, that she has to be standing there physically. Machlekes are showing whether, according to the opinion that take the Mishnah literally, you have to be standing there. Does it mean mamish inside the house or right next to the house? If he throws it into his own house or in his own courtyard, even if he throws it into her bed that she's sleeping in his house, she is not divorced. Into a bosom, to a kauta, into a basket, then she is divorced, even though she is in his house. But if he threw it into her basket, she is divorced. Why? We'll see more later. It's a basket which she transported, her needles and her threads and all that. So up to Ayin Zayin, we just began the new Perek. We're up to the Gemara. So you can throw the get not only into her hand, but you can place it anywhere in her under her ownership. So how do we know that? So we learned. So the possible you should place in her hand, ain't the Eliyadah in her hand. Gaga from how you know the roof in the courtyard, on the porch, how you know that's all good enough. Tam lema the nasan. Mikol makam. The nasan means anywhere where you place it. And Rashi said, because if it means only in the hand, it sure said biyodah nasan. It says the nasan biyodah. So we dash the nasan that place it anywhere you want. But that's how Rashi. Others are different. We learn Gabekana, the same thing by Ganef will have a sort of pay Yoda in Babakama. Yoda, if he stole it and he picked it up in his hand. Gabi, if maybe not how he took it in his house or his roof. How do you know that? Oh, they're also kind of Menayin, how do you know? Tamaloim is a posik. He mutze to mutze mikol mokum. As long as the Ganef found in anyone's possessions, he's considered a Ganef. There's a long tzos, and he explains about Machlekes we're showing him when we say courtyard. Does he have to let's say this someone else's item finds itself in his courtyard and he decides in his mind, I want to keep it. Does that make him a ganef, or does he have to physically do a mice as well, like close the door or something? With tzrich, why do you need them both? So can buy a get and buy a ganef. To tell you that doesn't mean limited. It's not limited only to the hand. Here's many guys only know about get about kolcha or megaja because it's even about kolcha against the will. So maybe you don't really need a full yad. That's why it's good enough in a chutzner. But ganef, the less about kolcha. Ganef only become a ganef because you wanted to become a ganef. Maybe you need a stronger kinyan, has to be mamish in your hand. Yes, many ganef will say, that says you did the wrong thing, will penalize you as in any way possible, will turn you into a ganef. So even if you put a place in your chutzner, you're ganef. I will get, there's no penalty there. Maybe it has to be dafka in her hand. Therefore you need both. The Gemara Chatzeda, how can she have a chotzer? The husband has all the dividends from his wife, he has all the paytas and everything else, so therefore he has a stake in it. So never really left him to go to her. So how can she ever be kind of the chotzer? Because it says, you're right, it's talking about a case, because of this, Rabbi said, because of law, he writes to her, the husband writes to her, I don't want anything to do with your assets or this particular asset. We'll see them in. So he says, I don't want it. Says the Gemara, we had this in the Son of Perek. I don't want anything. If something belongs to me already, he's married, so he already acquired a chelik in the property. What he means is you can't just walk away. You have to do a kinyan. So he gives you the certain methods that you have to follow. But Tanya, somebody said to his friend, Din v'dvarim ain't have something to have to do with this field. They ain't the asig bar have no geschäft with it. Any one of these phrases, my hands removed from it. Lo amaklum. Once it's yours, you can't just walk away. You have to make a kinyan to take it out of your rishus. Because of love, like we just said, he wrote to her while they were only engaged. He didn't get ownership yet. And there's a machlekes to show him if what happens if he said to her before they got engaged. Is it like a double shaloi bala olam and therefore it doesn't mean anything, or even then also it would have helped if he said before you got engaged, I don't want to have any of your assets. We're going to make a prenup here. You have no my, I have no yours, nothing. We're going to have a person, if something's coming to you from somewhere else, from, you're sourcing it from outside, externally, you can opt out of it and say I don't want it. On what basis? Like Rava said, for example, where I don't want the Chama want to benefit me. I'm not interested. You're going zu like, for example, in this case, you list not in other words, not in all cases, but in this case. Mikey going zu. What do you mean? What's an example of this case? We made these rules that the husband has to provide for the wife, but all the earnings go to the husband. A woman can say, I don't need my husband to provide for me. I understand you're trying to help me out. I don't need your help. So we see that if a chachami want to benefit you, you have the right to opt out of it. So there's a big machlokes to show exactly how we contrast this. Notice, for example, a Yerusha. Are we making a distinction here, the way some of the Shem learn, between the Rabbanan and the Raisa? In other words, here, why does the husband get from the wife? Because the Rabbanan gave it to him. So he said, you're trying to benefit me, I'm not interested. But a Yerusha that a child gets from his parent, which is Mahat Torah, he can't opt out of it. Because
here we used after that motion. Amr of Canaan.
Yeah, but you're talking about a husband and a wife. Yeah, a husband to a wife. That's a Yashana, Yash and her. That's a husband of John the Rabbanon, according to most. Some hold not tell you, but okay, that's one school of thought. The other school of thought is it's not the difference of Rabbanon that I said. The difference is where it's not yours. We're giving it to you from an outside source. You say, I don't want it. But Yerusha is something, as soon as the child is born, he's already a Yiddish. No, there's a whole Chakira. When do you become a Yiddish? Only after the parent passes away, then you become a Yiddish? Or as soon as you're born, you're already a Yiddish, but it doesn't play out until the parent passes away. So they want to say, these other Rishonim, that a Yiddish, as soon as you're born, you're Yiddish. How do you opt out of it? By saying over here, this has nothing to do with you. It's now, after you get married, this is the Chacham gave over to you. So you say, don't bring it, don't give it to me. I don't want it. Then one further. So therefore, that's one answer that we give. How does a woman ever get divorced in her chatzah if the husband did not said, I don't want to have any chelik in this chatzah, which then is a very rare case. It wouldn't be ubiquitous because how often does it happen? The husband said, I don't want any share in your properties. So Rabbi comes along and says, give a different shot. What about her hand? All her earnings go to the husband. And yet, he can give her a get in the hand. How? Forget the chatzah. What about the hand? How can you give a get to her hand? How do you ever get a get to a woman when the husband has a chelik in their hand? Rabbi introduced a new concept that a get and a hand both come at the same time.
When you say Yoda, you mean her ability to acquire.
In other words, if you give her a get, she now takes full ownership of her hand. But she does not get full ownership of her hand until the get is valid. So the get becomes activated and her hand both happen simultaneously. And which is the cause, which is the effect? It's a beautiful tzasir and all that. Tzasir explains this works by a get because a get you don't really have to acquire. Those where you have to have a real kinyan, forget about a get. If I wanted to sell you a chutzah, I throw the star into the chutzah. The only reason why you own the chutzah is because I gave you a star, but the star is sitting in the chutzah, so you don't have the star yet. So the only way you can have the star is if you own the chutzah, but you don't own the chutzah unless you have the star. Says the tzassim, then we wouldn't say get because you need a beginning and an end. You need to see a cause and effect. Over here, because you don't even have to acquire it. Main thing is you don't need her conscience. You don't need to be aware of it. You can do it on Yisr Hana, which you don't really acquire anything when you get Yisr Hana. So which proves that over here, then the sin is not a real proper sin. That's why you can say Boin Ke'echad. Others want to say that over here, her hand was always hers. Something, an external thing came and sort of blocking it because now that you got married, the husband has a right. So there, in this way, what are we doing? We're taking that external thing, we're blocking that blocker, and therefore the hand can be effective. Then we'll say get to the yad boin kechad. But for example, I want to be makna you or get in a chutzah where there's nothing blocking it. It's not your chutzah, it's not your yard. It's not because something's blocking it. It's not yours in the first place. Here, it has to be done in a sequence of events. First, you have to have the star, then you can have the chutzah. Anyway, the same logic by hand applies to a chutzah, that they get the chutzah come at the same time. Nothing to do with the fact that the husband said, nothing to do with that. It has to do with that the get and the chutzah become hers simultaneously. Just like the hand. I don't understand. What's bothering you over the hand? The husband owns the hand of a woman. The earnings that are produced by the hand, the husband, let's say takes because he provides for her. Nothing to do with the hand. Ashkenazim in the chatzah is a different story. Whatever, but the husband gets all the dividends. So the Gemara, the kanal lemaisi there, but you're the goof for me kanal, and the hand belongs to the husband. What's the question? How are you comparing the case of a get in her hand and the case of a get placed in the chatzah? Rabbi, you're right, but Amalei said to him, you misunderstood. Rava yad ha'eved ko kashale. Rashi says, it's not the yad of a woman, the yad of an eved. The man, but the one who said there's a machlekes if you can give the get, the divorce papers to an eved directly to him, or you have to give it to someone else to collect for him, because the hand of an eved belongs to the master. So there's a machlekes if you give it to the eved, it never left the master, because the eved has no hand. No, there's two ways of understanding, as the Rashba explains over there. There's two ways of understanding how the hand of an Eved works. Yad Eved ki Yad Rabbi. Is the pshat that the Eved has no hand of his own? Or the pshat is the Eved has a hand, but then immediately it's taken out of his hand and then transferred to the Balabas. So if you learn that the Eved has a hand, but immediately it's taken out, then you can say that as soon as the Balabas gives him a get and says, that's it. Whatever goes in the hand stays there. It doesn't come back to me anymore, then it's effective. But if you learn the Eved has no hand in the first place, whatever he placed it goes is as if this is an extension of the master, then I can give him a get. So so the hand of an Eved is like, belongs to the master. Yet how can you give him according to the opinion? No, they come at the same time. The same logic. We're not talking about a woman. Okay, so Rabbi comes up with a big chiddush like Gittin Daf. There's a story. The Kosel Gittin Bisu, he wrote a get for his wife. He wrote a get Friday afternoon. They had no children, and he was dying, and he didn't want his wife to be stuck. So he wrote a get straight away, right before he died. Didn't have a chance to give it to her before Shabbos. Tomorrow, Takava Alma, he got very, very sick. It was moments left. Also, coming to Rabbi, obviously he couldn't go, but the relatives of his went to Rabbi, and they said, "What should we do?" He's trying. We don't give a get. A get is muksa on Shabbos. We don't give a get on Shabbos. So what should he do? Amalu zilu go omrule tell them liknenela lahuduchta diyosabegite wherever the get is sitting. Let him, wherever the get is sitting right now, let him, which is somewhere in his house, let him be makna to her that place, that's where it is. The tezel iu, the tichay, the tifta v'tachs, but let her go make a kinya chazaka, close the door, open the door, and by doing that, she will be kind of the place, and then she'll be with the place, she's kind of the get. How? According to Rashi, kinyan agav, when you buy karka and there's metalton as well with part of the sale, you're kind of metalton with it. Other disagree with Rashi because the halach is a kedushin taka. He doesn't have to be sitting inside the property, he can be anywhere. So they learn kinyan chatz. So we're suspending a law of the Rabbanan, you don't make kinyan Shabbos either, in order to make it easier. The obvious question is, why don't we suspend the law then and just let him give her the get? Giving a get is muktzah is also the Rabbanan. Being kind is the Rabbanan. So why did you decide to suspend the law of making kinyanim on Shabbos rather than suspend the law of giving a get? Sounds like from here that the Isur is the levels of Isur in the Rabbanan, and the Isur the Muktzah is far stricter than the Isur of making kinyanim. Kinyanim, because you might write whatever. So this is like a Isur Muktzah is much more than that, because like there's 4 reasons why there's Muktzah, and therefore they didn't want to suspend the laws of Muktzah. But now we learn, no, Pagoda, or part of kosher is chazaka, that's a kinyan chazaka. Said to Rav, I don't understand. Let's say she's kind of the karka, but the chayda masha kansi she kind of baila. Isn't it so that whatever that belongs to the woman belongs to the husband? We had this a number of times. Rav made a psak, and then he was embarrassed. But it always turned out to be that he was right at the end because the yatsa d'shmaya. And but it turned out right because the circumstances were different, or he chaptach later that his reasoning that he said at the time was not the right reasoning, but there's other reasoning that will make it right. This is the inner seyat of Shmai. Seder Shmai is not that you learn from Allah and you'll take you correctly. Seder Shmai is that even if Hashem you pass it wrong, it turns out to be that's the right psak. Maybe not for the reason you said. I will see. At the end it turned out to be that she was going on Arusa, which means that the husband didn't own anything of hers yet. Amarava Im. So therefore, it turned out to be they gave the right psak. Again, we had this a few times already. Amarava says Rav Im Amru ben Nesua Yema Barusa. Rava said that by a Nesua, okay, belongs to the husband, but not by a Rusa, so no problem. But then Hadar Amar Rava, later Rava said, the truth of the matter is it doesn't make no difference. Because So the Gemara, so why not say that? You already said that to the top of the page. This is what triggered him with his chiddush. That's why Rabbi didn't say it first, because this is a very big chiddush. It only came up to him afterwards. There was a big controversy from what suspending was. It was the second day of Yom Tov, and a person was dying, and he wanted to give a get to his wife, and so he made the Rabbanim, and he wanted to know if he can write a get on Yom Tov with Eidim, second day, to give his wife so she should be spared Yibum. And the Yad Eliezer was a grandson of Rabbi Yehuda, came out of the psak, says yes. And one of the bases was right here, the Gemara, we suspended the Rabbanim, and Shlomo Kluger and some Sefer, and everybody came, was modified. There was a big split in the rabbinic community at that time.
Was that called the Cleve?
Well, it's something like it's a story. Totally different story. But this story is based on this Gemara right here about suspending a Yisur Rabbanan to avoid her the tsar of marrying a brother. Second one further, Amar Ula says, when does it work? When is it effective that she can receive a get in her chutzah? She has to stand right next to the house, next to the courtyard. As long as she owns the courtyard, she doesn't have to be there. Says the Gemara, Megrash divorce. Well, he doesn't clearly say that she has to be standing inside her house. I told him Machlekes is showing you whether it means inside or right next to it. Hachakama. There's a video camera, so you can see what's going on. Or there's a gate around. No, as long as there's privacy there and people can't get in and it's protected, it's as if she's there. What does she add? Nothing. Because we don't need her das, remember, because we're about karcha. Kivan the chatzah so daita he was so the machlekes ul and abeshir. Lema b'hakamivki. Let's say maybe the argument is followed. Marsa v'chatzah mishum yodis raboy. One of the halls that chatzah is because a yad, and therefore just a yad is close to you, so you have to be standing next to chatzah. Umarsa v'chatzah mishum shlichus raboy. The other hold will have all this in the beginning, but and the other hold that chatzah is an extension of shlichus. Just like you can have an agent, your chatzah acts on your behalf of shlichus. The mother makes not enough minutes halacha between the two, and therefore because chatzah mishum shlichus. Shlichus travels away from you. You don't have to be standing next to it. Say, well, I know. Maybe kol yam chatzah mishum yodis raboy. Mar savar ki yoda. One holds the mamish like your hand. Ma yoda besmuch avchatei besmuch. You have to be right next to it. V'idach. If you can take, literally, your hand is attached to you. Does your courtyard have to be attached to you? Of course not. What do you mean kiyada? Ma yoda mishtamera, you know what's going on in your hand. That you can protect what's in the chatzah. When it comes to Geneva, actually, there are opinions that chatzah by Geneva, even if generally everything else is chatzah shmiyad, but by Geneva it's shlichus. So then they try to work out how do we fit in the Geneva. We're saying here goes that everyone agrees yad. What do you explain by Geneva? How come they're arguing by Geneva as well? Unless they're not arguing by Geneva. Lafuki to negate chatzah shemeres, exclude chatzah shemeres, shaloi l'daita. If it's not protected. Think about who gave it a person is only get to visit through getting to his wife. How they came of the chatzah, and that was standing by the chatzah, but then also get enough of a piece. It didn't land on the ground of the chatzah, it landed on a piece of wood. We look at it as follows. If this piece of wood is an area that's 4 amas by 4 amas, so it's a separate reshus, it never landed in the chatzah. The line, if not, chad reshus is 1 reshus. Says the Gemara, the Maya asking, what exactly are we talking about? In other words, she's not divorced because it's not part of the chatzah. What are we talking about? It's her chatzah, then who cares? Who cares? So it's a separate issue in her chatzah. It all belongs to her anyway. His chatzah. If it's his chatzah, and kiloi have arba is mahava. If it's not for amis, who cares? It's his chatzah. She can't be kind. So the Gemara, he lent her. He said, "Look, where the get is going to land in the chatzah is going to be your area, so that you can be kind." The chad makam mostly in shit. He lent her a space on the ground. And therefore, 1 space he will lend, but 2 spaces he won't lend. When do we say that's a separate source? That we need 4 amas if it's not 10 tefachim high? It's 10 tefachim high. Then you don't need 4 amas. It doesn't have a name of its own. Whatever this series, it's not called a bench, for example. It has a name of its own. It's chashiv regardless of its dimensions. He was not 10 tefachim high. Even not 4 amas high. It's a separate. He said the chatzah, but it's not the chatzah. This is a separate piece. If it's in her bed, the bed belongs to him, and if the get lands on the bed that she's sleeping, but it's his bed, You're not kind of. I will be to shalom. The bed belongs to her. Of course, Megadeshes, she is Megadeshes. She's sleeping in his house, but if the bed belongs to her, now there's a concept called the kalim of a lekeach. Can they on your behalf in the owner's house? There's a whole shot of Ataya. And right now the Gemara thinks that yes, it does. So if it's on her bed, so even though it's in the house of the moicher of the husband, but it's kalim of lekeach, it is kalim. His bed ain't Mekadeshes because it's his bed. But Mitzvah is her bed. Mekadeshes says the Gemara of Mitzvah. You can assume that in her bed, Mekadeshes doesn't that prove that Kalov shall lekeach. If the lekeach happens to have his own utensils, b'shus meicher in the house of the meicher, that's what this case is. And you tell me it's effective. Shamat, let's bring it out from here. The Kalov shall lekeach b'shus meicher kana. Why is it hoshak v'tayit? Come lekeach, the lekeach is kana. We're talking about over here that the bed is 10 tefachim high, and therefore it's not buckled to the shus of the husband. That's why she's kind. Nothing to do with, not because of Kalov Shalakeach, but because it's outside of the shus of the husband. Once it's 10 tefachim high, it's like a separate shus we just had before. Says the Gemara. What about the legs of the bed which are sitting on the floor? That's in the husband's shus. People don't really care how much space does it take up, and he can use the space under the bed. Let's continue mission quickly. Isn't that the same case? It's the kalim of the basket. It's her kalim in the house of the moicher. I'm going to have a number of shots. Well, he says you're going to show it's a kalb. It's talking about only in the case where it's hanging around her neck. It's not at all on the floor or anything else. But it's hanging around her. Ashur Lakir says you don't even have to have it hanging in the air. Sure, if it's tied around her. It's sitting on the floor because it's tied around her. It's considered as if it's hers. It's not called Kaleb Shalakech. So again, we're limiting the case of our Mishnah. Rabbi says, you know what? She's sitting there on the floor, and she puts it between her legs. So therefore, again, that's that whole area where she's sitting is hers, and therefore it's between her legs. And the person is not makbid on the area. What's he going to put there? So therefore, because he's not makbid on that area, it's if it's hers. So it's not Caleb Shalakech Rishus Meicher. He sells baskets, and there's a whole bunch of baskets sitting there on the floor. So therefore, he doesn't really care about the area that this basket takes up, and therefore it's not a Caleb Shalakech. The Mokum Mokum says no. That generally speaking, forget about all these limitations. Where she places the basket, it's hers. What's the logic? If they allow her into the house, they don't really care if she puts her pocketbook down and puts her thing, her things that she always carries with her down. That's what we learned. Anything which is similar to a counter is because the husband are makbid. And the eye is, what do we call davar shehuke counter? Let's say a basket that you close down to eat the dates. The idea is that things that she has with her, if you allow her into the house, you don't really care. It takes her more room by putting these things out. See you tomorrow, Mitzvah.